It's been over a year since Rhythm Heaven Groove was announced, and just a week ago, we finally got some new information announcing the price and the release date for it. By the time Groove comes out on July 2nd, it will have been over 10 years since the last Rhythm Heaven Megamix had come out. For those past 10 years, I've been waiting for a new game in the series, and it's finally here. Despite finally getting some new information and gameplay footage, we still don't really know all that much about this game. We don't know if it's going to stray from the formula like Megamix did, or go back to the traditional formula of the first 3 games. Regardless of what this game does, I'll probably still end up getting it, but there are 5 main things I hope to see in Rhythm Heaven Groove when it does eventually come out. Those 5 things I'll be listing and going over in this video. So the first thing I hope they do with Rhythm Heaven Groove is keep what worked with Megamix, specifically keep the challenges, store, and multiplayer. I know a lot of people weren't a huge fan of Megamix. Looking at forums and videos online, it's usually considered the worst or second worst pick for fans. I can't go as far as to say it was the worst game in the series. None of these games are bad, but it did change the formula and do a lot of different things, some for the better, some for the worse. Despite many of those complaints, I don't think every single thing from Megamix should be disregarded. One of the best things Megamix did, better than any other Rhythm Heaven, was add an incentive to continue playing the game after beating the main story. In every other Rhythm Heaven, there were extra things to do after beating every minigame, but it was things you would only do for your own satisfaction more often than not. Things like perfecting minigames didn't give you many tangible rewards outside of a couple bonus minigames. Here, not only do you get coins that can be used to buy things from the store from playing the regular minigames, but you get flow balls for perfecting minigames and beating the challenges. These flow balls could be used to buy minigames from previous Rhythm Heaven games. There was more incentive to replaying these minigames and perfecting them. As well, I also loved the challenge trains that Megamix added. There would be conditions such as not missing 3 times or getting a superb score, all while there were some modifiers, such as the minigame being faster. It was fun to have all this variety in what you can do and what you get out of doing all these bonus challenges. Along with that, there was also online multiplayer where you could do these challenge trains together with your friends. I hope that if they do some kind of online multiplayer, they do something similar to what Megamix did. My next point, and sticking with the train challenges for Megamix, the only downside with those challenges was that there was no way to practice playing those minigames with those modifiers. It just made it difficult to really get the hang of these altered minigames before doing them on the challenge train, because some of those challenges had such strict requirements, like scoring an 85 or only having 3 hearts. That's why I hope Rhythm Heaven Groove could give us the options, after beating the minigame of course, to add modifiers or challenges to each minigame if we want. Some of those modifiers could be something like increasing the speed of the minigame or putting up blinders so you can't see the minigames. Different things to add challenge and add some replayability to the game. It doesn't have to be crazy, even just adding a few modifiers would be fine. It would help flesh out the runtime of this game. Speaking of runtime, I really hope they include more than 40 minigames and 10 remixes. Megamix did already have more than 40 minigames, but it limited the remixes to 10, which is the amount of remixes we've had in the games since the one on the DS. I'm not saying that all these extra minigames or remixes have to be new or original songs. All the additional songs could just be old ones, but just something extra to really increase the playtime of this game. It also doesn't need to have every single minigame in the series either, just enough to where I don't beat the whole game in under 3 hours. As much as I do love these games, it only takes like 2 to 3 hours to get through each game, other than maybe Megamix. One thing I think would be cool is if they created remixes based off Nintendo music, so they could have a remix using Jump Up Superstar or a song from Donkey Kong Bonanza. People online have made remixes using pre-existing songs before using Rhythm Heaven Studio, so I think it would be super cool for Nintendo to do the same using their own IPs. Next, to bring up Megamix again, one thing that many people did not care for was the story. I'd have to agree with most people online that I did not care for the story in Megamix either. Not necessarily that there was a story to begin with, but just that there was so much of it. There was non-stop dialogue at parts, and early on in the game, there's dialogue after every single minigame. For my 4th wish, I'm okay with the story, but it has to be toned down, definitely limit it. It's okay if there's a basic plot or characters trying to achieve a goal. They could even add some kind of adventure mode where you go around a map and go to certain areas where you complete a minigame. After you complete enough minigames, you do a remix, and that unlocks the next level. They could do all these things, but limit the dialogue and make it as brief as possible. I don't think I'd want them to remove the story altogether, since I did like Tibby, and I found him much more memorable than the characters from Fever. whoever they were, but make the story as quick as possible and as simple as possible if there is to be one. Let's be honest, no one's playing a Rhythm Heaven game to read through a bunch of text. The story is fine. It would be nice for there to be a simple one to move the game along, but if there were to be one, keep it brief and simple. I'd rather have none at all over having to sit through a bunch of dialogue though. And finally, for my last point, of course, I would prefer everything I had listed in this video be included in Groove. However, I'd still buy the game if it doesn't do all those things. The only way I could see myself holding off on the game at release is if they don't provide English versions of the vocal songs, similar to what Megamix did. The biggest disappointment from Megamix to me was that they didn't provide an English translation of the vocal songs like they had done with the 2 previous Rhythm Heavens released outside of Japan. Those were always the best songs from those games, and to replace them with instrumentals was extremely disappointing. It was only 3 songs, but it felt like such an unnecessary removal when every other game had it included before. At the very least, Megamix did include the option to switch to the Japanese vocals for the minigames. I'd prefer though they add English versions of all the vocal tracks in the game, if there are to be any, which I hope there will be. The instrumentals sounded alright on the vocal songs in Megamix, especially Classmate, but nothing compares to actually hearing lyrics. If they were to fix one thing from Megamix, this would be the biggest thing for me. Those are the big things I personally would want out of Rhythm Heaven Groove. Of course, even if nothing here ended up in the game, then I'd probably still consider getting the game at some point or another. It just wouldn't be a day one purchase. We still have to wait and see what Nintendo has up their sleeve for the newest Rhythm Heaven game. At least we know it's coming out in July, so we know we won't have to wait long to see what's in this new Rhythm Heaven. After 10 years of waiting, any new Rhythm Heaven content would be greatly appreciated, no matter how good or bad. If you'd like, feel free to share in the comments things you'd love to see in the upcoming Rhythm Heaven game. Anyways, that's it for this video. See you all next time.